Hey guys, so when you see this video I will be away for a handful of days, so as such you should be held over with, well actually 3 videos that I've got recorded, including this one, which potentially means that I won't even have uploaded them all by the time I'm back. Anyway, this is an appropriately easy update video, but I wanted to commit to it properly, so I've actually written a script just to cover all bases and really make my disposition clear with regards to the whole YouTube career intersection. So if I had an ideal job, it would be that somebody pays me to read for a standard 40-hour week, and that's it. Perhaps with the caveat of it being non-fiction books, so that would perhaps be what's called researching or studying for 40 hours. Any topic I want really, and that's it. Heck, I'd be tempted to do overtime if that was my job, because it's what I like doing. I like learning about things, it's what I want to do. But the issue with this is, as an ideal job, is it's one of those hypothetical ideal jobs that doesn't really exist. It's not like video game tester or hammock model, where the joke is that you're very lazy and don't actually want to do anything. It would be, indeed, I can tell you from having in the past spent more than 40 hours a week just reading, it is hard work. The issue is that it isn't really a job. Now, there are some religious orders that allow you to sort of live doing pretty much exactly this. Jews, Buddhists, Christians, they all have these weird monks who live in the mountains and basically just study. Now, I actually am religious, but this doesn't really appeal to me because firstly, I wouldn't want to be limited to reading about only religion, as you might have guessed from the whole channel about gender politics thing. But the other slight hindrance here is that I'm not asexual, which is kind of a funny thing about these religious orders. For some reason, we're all agreed on the fact that you can study theology, have a job, and be sexually active. But if you remove the have a job aspect of that by going to live in some sort of religious commune, then you're also expected to drop the sex. Of course, one group of people who read lots of books, have a job, and are sexually active would be ministers. What I mean in saying they have a job is that they do actually produce something for which they receive a salary. They produce a weekly sermon and engage in other pastoral work, and this really is content creation. They create content in the form of sermons and get paid for that. Indeed, I reasonably quickly worked out that content creation is the closest I could hope to get to my ideal job, which I'm not paid directly for the actual hard work of researching, but paid for the content I produce that stems from that research. Now, actually, the first idea I had in this vein was to be an author. Anybody who remembers old 2014-2015 mumbling in his university dorm, Michael, will know that I was actually planning at one point on writing a book about feminism. Long story short is that I used to be an anti-feminist, but after challenging myself to read some books about feminism, I became a feminist. However, I noticed a gap in the market. In all the books I'd read, which were largely some of the most popular feminist books, I never encountered a book that simply set out for itself the task of making an argument for feminism. I term this feminist apologetics, although I realize some people might object to the religious connotations of that. However, what I mean by it is a book that has the stated purpose up front of making an argument for feminism that the author believes will convince the reader to become a feminist. So I actually have a massive number of books on feminism to make sure that I was really giving the best arguments I could, and I really knew what I was talking about. And I wrote the book, sort of. I compiled it into notes and wrote a decent number of chapters and sent many of them away as sample chapters to literary agents. However, even as I was doing this, it felt far-fetched and kind of ridiculous to be sending off chapters of a book I'd written to literary agents and thinking I might actually become a published author. And unsurprisingly, the responses I got from literary agents were all varying shades of no thanks. I don't really know why this was, and I don't dwell on it too much. I maintain that it's a good book, and it's something that I plan to rework and have another crack at some point in the future. However, the important thing is that I had just spent 3 years of my life researching and reading, and when it came down to actually making any sort of a living off it, the end result was coming up short. Now, you might have noticed that I have already mentioned YouTube, and be thinking that this is the point where I then say that, of course, the best means to achieve my ends would be through YouTube. However, no, the truth is that I didn't go into YouTube because I wanted to do it as a career. My first ever video on my channel was literally a portion of a Stefan Molyneux video where I had written my rebuttal in the description. So uninterested was I in making video responses. My first 2 video responses I actually produced were made on an impulse because I couldn't stand how stupid the arguments were, and then I didn't even upload the videos until several months later. This is why, despite uploading my first videos in late 2014, and therefore having technically been producing videos for 6 years, I've never really been producing videos for more than a year or two of those 6 years, because it wasn't really my main thing. And part of this is simply that it seems very silly to me to say, I want to be a YouTuber. It seems like something you shouldn't actually plan for, but rather allow for as a possibility. I mean, the aforementioned video game tester career that I made as a joke has now somewhat been made a reality by YouTube, but still we quite rightly look with pity on anybody who sets up a camera and starts playing a game in the hopes of becoming the next PewDiePie. Anyway, so actually my next plan was to get a government role doing research. It was the logical step with a bachelor's in international relations and quite close to my ideal career. Sit down and spend loads of time reading and finding out facts, just to spend a comparatively short amount of time compiling a report and get paid a decent wage. Something like that in a government role would suit me, and this is actually interesting to me, every single service role that has this automated test where you are asked about certain situations that might arise in work and say how you would respond, and I genuinely failed every single time. You'd think after the first dozen attempts I'd start to learn by rote, but nope. And I wasn't just obstinately choosing what I thought was the correct answer out of spite, knowing it would be wrong. I was genuinely trying to go for the answer I thought would be the best, and I kept failing. Anyway, after a while I realised that it was almost dishonest to be repeatedly applying for these jobs, when I'm apparently very much not what the government is interested in terms of my temperament. I started doing a shitty job I hated until I had an existential crisis, left on somewhat of a whim, and after a pretty short while decided to do a master's in international journalism, because journalism, it makes sense. I mean, it's not perfect, depending on the exact job. There might be a lot of stupid stories that just need to be mindlessly typed up. However, a decent amount of it is about researching and really trying to learn things and then producing content based on what you've discovered. So I did my master's in journalism and have been doing that for over a year. And I just finished it. That's what this video is about. I got a first, more specifically I averaged 79%, and yet I'm still incredibly pissed off about one module where I averaged 61% after putting a huge amount of effort into it. But the point is that I did get a good grade overall. In fact, I wanted to read you a bit of feedback I got from my tutor, and this is it. I'm not going to mess around with the audio, so you just have to imagine that I'm putting on a voice. I also have a bit of a sore throat. I would argue that you are in the territory of now becoming one of the expert journalists on trans politics, and you should use this as a launch pad for your journalistic career. So what's the plan? Well, it's still not to become a YouTuber, exactly. I am firmly of the philosophy that trying to force something like a YouTube career is only going to end in frustration and discontent. Rather, my plan is to try to take that feedback as very sincere advice and look towards actually becoming a journalist who can make a decent living, but also with a specific focus on transgender issues. And it's pretty obvious how this, for my channel, would be good news. It will, on innumerable levels, directly facilitate the creation of content for it. So what's the plan? Well, preamble all over and done with, the plan is actually pretty simple. Trying to become a journalist, allow that to inform my work on this channel, and have fun. But let's be more specific to this channel and YouTube in general. The first bit of news in that regard is this, and it helps to bring us full circle. I've decided to abandon my aspirations of making my way through large numbers of books for the immediate future. Heretofore, a plan I have to varying extents been effective at implementing, depending on factors mostly to do with university work, has been to dedicate enough time to read 200 pages a day, and then still have enough time over to produce a YouTube video and do some luxury time. But since I'm going to be wanting to juggle work on having an actual career now with also producing videos, well, in perhaps a counterintuitive way, it actually means I'm going to be spending more time producing videos because I'm not going to be really making a big effort to do things other than produce videos. And of course, if you want to donate some money on Patreon, do, because I suspect that I will be quite flexible working as a journalist and as such would be able to work for only as long as I need to in order that I could make ends meet. Obviously, the more money from something like Patreon, the more time I will be able to dedicate to producing videos. So honestly, in that regard, it's really up to you how much you want to give, and as such, how much time I can have to work on videos, which is honestly a situation I prefer rather than having to be committed to making videos as my job, and then having to be like, please guys, give me money because I need to survive. That would not be ideal. Now, there is one extra thing I did want to add. I find the ability of content creation on YouTube to turn almost any activity into content really fascinating, and this is something I do want to take more and more advantage of as time goes by. For those who don't know, I already have a film review channel that I operate with my friend Luke, and I am planning on producing some scripted content for that when I get more settled down with making videos here. Right now I'm still completing videos often the day of uploading them, and I want to get a bit more comfortably ahead of the curve in that regard. So when that happens, I will start also throwing in content for that channel. Significantly here, I also do enjoy watching films anyway, so this is a way of taking something that I just enjoy doing and turning it into content. I also want to start producing short weekly content for a channel related to religion. This channel was also created a while ago and has been linked as a feature channel for a decent amount of time. So I would similarly like to get that going when I get comfortable producing potentially even more than one video a day. So I suddenly realized I wasn't really breathing. I'm a very fast talker. Like, it is something I really need to get over. I need to learn to talk slower, and I'm just never ever going to be able to do it. Now, I do also need luxury time like any person, but honestly, even in this regard, I am considering starting a channel for playing Civilization 4, which is almost the only game I play. Again, that's something which I'm considering trying and uploading in the future, but with each successive channel idea mentioned, the chances of it being produced decreases, the amount of time you can expect until I actually produce content for it increases. I'd also like to start a vlog channel for some pretty random stuff, but also because I do want to do a bit of traveling at some point before I die, and I figure one way to potentially mitigate the cost of that would be to monetize it at least a little bit. And finally, well, I don't know if there's any point mentioning this because it's so distant, but I also like reading about history, so if I ever get back into the swing of reading regularly, I might make an effort to produce an alternative history channel informed by my reading on certain historical periods. By the way, I didn't script this, but I really hate Alternative History Hub. Like, it's actually a beef which I very rarely get an opportunity to express, but I hate everything about him. Okay, I hate some aspects of who he is as a person, because I happen to have seen him on Twitter say some dodgy things, but also his content is terrible, because literally every single video he does, it'll be like, what if blah 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 happens, and then he just kind of talks about it in the most general terms, and then he just kind of says, oh yeah, really, you can't predict it, if we did this, everything would be so different. And it's like, well, yeah, that's your job. Like, I don't understand why people watch his content, because every single video, he doesn't actually inform you he doesn't come up with any interesting scenarios. Like, if I started an alternative history channel, the idea would be that it wouldn't be me saying, and the weird thing is, there's a whole caveat where he says, this is just one example. But then you look at it, and his scenario isn't even interesting. He doesn't make any out there speculations. Like, that's what I would do. If I started an alternative history channel, I would start with a premise, and then I would say, this is what I think might happen. This is a speculation. And it would be a specific story about how the world would evolve from a given point where history diverges. Not what Alternative History Hub does, where he just says, yeah, if you change this one thing, turns out things would be different. Well, duh. Oh, terrible channel. Anyway, so that's actually a much more elaborate plan with regards to YouTube, but it's one I've had in my head. Now, you may potentially be a bit apprehensive because you're really thinking you'd rather I produce loads of content for this channel rather than going off doing other things. However, firstly, almost every other channel idea I have is something that's just fun to me anyway. It's not like I'm spending too much extra time on these channels in the grand scheme of things. Moreover, the truth is that I think I'd get burned out if I just spoke about gender issues all the time, and that's why I'm already starting to diversify my content on this channel. Nonetheless, I do want to keep things limited to politics on this channel, which is why my other interests will bleed out onto other channels. And what I'm sort of hoping is that eventually these channels might start to become bigger in their own right and actually direct traffic back to this channel, and at least mean that this channel becomes more viable as something to spend a huge amount of time on, but also might actually go some way towards exposing people to gender critical ideas and changing their minds. So with all this said, let's review. 1. I'm going to be trying to go into journalism as my career, but potentially with specific focus towards gender politics. As such, that should hopefully be a synergy between my career and YouTube. 2, I'm not planning on YouTube being my career, but I'm hoping that YouTube might become an additional income source that can justify me spending a decent amount of time on it. Although, since most of my content ain't ad-friendly, this is contingent on your support. I do also casually entertain the possibility that YouTube might be a viable full-time option at some point. 3, I'm going to be actually dedicating a lot more time to producing YouTube videos and less time to stuff that isn't directly content production, like research for now. I think I have a broad enough grounding in the research. Of course, if I need to research one specific thing for a video, I'll do that, but I'm not going to be habitually reading anymore. And as such, I hope to get considerably ahead of the curve in terms of video production and be releasing most likely 2 videos a week plus 1 or 2 videos featuring my friend Luke. 4, and branching out, expect to see me promoting my other channels in the future as I adjust to that. Most likely you will see me referencing my film review channel within a month and my religion channel a little bit after that. The Civ channel will fall shallow as that's something I do for fun, although I am trying to complete a full game before I start uploading regularly. 5 is my hope that these channels might also form a vaguely symbiotic relationship with this channel that will be to the benefit of me, as I'll get to do more of what I love while sharing it with more people, and you guys, as either you'll enjoy my other content, or if not, at least this channel might get some extra traffic directed towards it from other channels. And there we go, that's my plan. I don't feel the need to do the whole like and subscribe standard YouTuber stuff, because this entire video has basically just been one massive dose of YouTuber stuff. Nonetheless, I will thank my patrons, because if there's any takeaway from this video, it's that the people who are currently making it so this actually earns me money are greatly appreciated. And I've actually got 3 new patrons this week, if you can believe it, so I'll give them a shout out now. Big thank you to my current patrons: Hannah Taylor, Kirsten, Stephen, Nancy T, Rubble of Empires, Lizzie Desu, Constant Disappointment, Adriana Delgado, Harper Gore, Alex Leica, Jane Einstein, George Sibley, Katie, Ryan, Vishnuvius, your name's getting cut off, I'm afraid, Pranjanavan, and Pricey. You are all very appreciated.